p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Central. And by one of our speakers, Nishan, who's in Berlin, it's really, really early in the morning. Welcome to the Ray Wenderlich livecast from Google I/O. I have quite a staff with me today, especially my partner in crime this season, Jen Bradley. Jen is sitting at Google I/O, along with some of the other team members from Ray Wenderlich, and we're going to discuss what happened today at Google I/O, talking about some of the keynotes and some of the other breakout sessions. Before we start, we do want to remind you that the podcast this season is brought to you by TripleByte. Applying to programming jobs sucks, and you have to put the right keywords in your resume. You spend hours and hours on phone screens and take-home projects. And that's assuming the company even responds to your application or your cover letter or anything like that. Well, if you're a software engineer, the good news is that TripleByte can help. They work with over 400 top tech companies, from big names like Dropbox and Adobe to exciting startups. You do one brief online interview with them, and if you do it well, you get to go straight to the final interview with the companies on their platform. It's like a common app for software engineers. Now, TripleByte does not look at your resume or where you went to school. All they care about is if you can code. You do their technical test. Once you've gotten through that stage, you move on. And as somebody who's self-taught, it really is something I appreciate, to be evaluated for my coding ability and my experience, rather than whether or not I actually got the bachelor's degree, which between you and I didn't. Now, here's the great deal. If you apply now at triplebyte.com/Ray, that's triplebyte.com, BYTE as in 8 bits, as a special offer for listeners of this episode and any episode this season. If you get a job through TripleByte, they'll offer you a $1,000 signing bonus. So we really appreciate TripleByte for sponsoring this season of the Ray Wenderlich podcast. But in the meantime, I've got several guests here from the Ray Wenderlich team, and I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves. Let's start, obviously, with Joe Howard.
Hi, I'm Joe. I am the pillar lead for RayWenderlich.com, which just means that I work with all of our content teams to bring tutorials to the site.
Thank you, Joe. And Victoria, how about you?
Hi, I'm Victoria Ganda. I'm working on the Android and Kotlin team, working as an author, as well as a technical editor and final pass editor there. And then I'm also an Android developer at Buffer.
Thank you so much. Philip?
Hello everyone, so I'm an Android developer at the Fire Agency in Croatia, and on Ray Wenderlich I'm the Android book and tutorial and sometimes a final pass editor for tutorials.
And Philip, we really enjoy the effort that you and Jenna are making to be here today, because I know that you're both at Google I/O, where both the power supply and the signal can break up sometimes. Nishant, you are our winner today. You're calling in from Berlin. Why don't you tell people a little bit about you?
Yeah. Hi, people. I'm Nishant Shrivastava. I'm one of the members of the Android team. I'm writing tutorials as well as working as a book author too. And I'm basically, in my day job, I'm working at a company called Soundbrenner as a senior Android engineer here in Berlin. It's super early here, but it's really cool to be talking to all these awesome people.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And of course, my partner, who I can't do this season without, Jen Bradley. You are also, Jen Bailey. Oh, wow. Jen Bailey, you are out at Google I/O as well. Why don't you give yourself a quick introduction to people who don't?
Hi, I'm Jen Bailey. I'm here. I'm a professor of computer science, and my college is what flew me here. So thanks to Ames Community College for the flight and the ticket price. And for Ray Wenderlich, I write on the Android team. I'm working on a saving data book, and I like to write articles or tutorials of all different varieties.
Thank you so much, Jen. So we started today with the big one, which was the general keynote about Google I/O. Does anybody want to talk about what they saw there? I realize that's probably the least tech of the day, but just some general impressions for what the general messaging was from Google for today.
Yeah, let's hear from Jen and Philippe. What was the atmosphere out there? How were people taking the first keynote?
The keynote was really exciting. I think that it was well received. It seemed like a very relaxed but enthusiastic I.O. They had some exciting announcements to make. So some of those including one thing I really like, because I'm a fan of the assistant, you're not going to have to say "Okay, Google" as often. So that was a really big surprise, and I'm thankful for that. And they had a bunch of other stuff. Philippe, was there anything in particular that you liked from the keynote?
Yes, so it seems like it would be a regular Google I/O, a regular Google product launch, and announcement, all stuff, everything about machine learning, about AI, about assistant. But then again, there were some really spectacular things like managing to reduce a model of 100 gigabytes to a half gigabyte, which you can fit on your phone and use your Android device and your Google Assistant to seamlessly shift between apps and ask for a bunch of things without actually tapping the phone. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah, that seemed to be one of the real main topics, was putting everything on device. Victoria and Nishant, what did you guys think of the keynote?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things that I noted too. Just like assistant bringing on the phone, like how it's going to make things so much faster, and then also the privacy that comes with that too, like having it on device, and then even with the what was it called, the federated learning, that they're improving or going to, I don't remember, very model.
Jen, I'm going to ask if you could mute your microphone right now. I'm getting a little bit of feedback from you. Thanks so much, Jen. Go ahead, Victoria. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Just like excited that like with the federated learning that they're able to improve the models by improving the models locally on your device, and then they just send up, instead of the raw data, the like changes in the model, so that they can pull that up from all the different users and create a better model to update everyone else's device.
Yeah, that's exactly like one of those things that were very interesting to me too. But one of the things that actually blew my mind was the duplex on web, where they basically there's nothing like a development that you have to do on the third-party side, but Google is basically understanding your needs, iterating through as less step they can go through, and they just navigate through the whole process, maybe like booking your rental car or maybe getting your reservation at a restaurant. That was really cool. Like that was like, when I was looking at the keynote like live stream, I was like, this is something of a new technology that's coming up, which was pretty nice. Although one thing that hit my head when I was trying to understand this federated learning, and I'm explaining that all these machine learning models running on devices, what I was thinking in my head, because like I used to work with a lot of like embedded system too, was that what's happening with the battery cycles now, because they are getting used like on our devices, even though they might probably be being used for when the phones are plugged in, but something's happening with the battery cycles. They are definitely processing some things on our devices now instead of doing it on Google centers. So that was something different that I was thinking through.
I was surprised at not just the dropping of Hey Google, but how quickly she was able to go from statement to statement and have each one processed. In the demo, she rattled off a series of commands: open this application, or get me this reservation, or get me this picture, or when does my flight arrive? But she just kept rattling them off, and the assistant was able to keep up with that.
Yeah, and it seems like it's a trade-off between making the network call for getting the talking to the model online versus doing that computation on device. So I think it'll balance out a little bit. We'll have to see what it does to battery life over time, but really cool.
Yeah, and like with that, I was surprised with what they're doing with like even like the Go phones that like have like lesser like connection, or like maybe lower end with like, I think it was the live transcribe that was on those devices. So I was like really impressed with everything that they're able to do, even on maybe not like the flagship phone, but maybe some other smaller devices.
They did introduce the new Pixel phones, the 3A and the 3A XL, which were both lower cost phones, but they did try to basically throw the new camera up against other cameras. Is it going to be as feature complete as it feels, or is it really a lower cost phone in your opinions?
I think it sounds a bit too good to be true for the beginning, but I've actually met a person who carried a Pixel 3 XL around the venue, and we met him, we talked with him, and the phone sounded really amazing, and it actually performed real well. So there were no performance drops or anything. So it seems that they managed to take the hand phone and put it at the mid-range regarding price without actually off at any single point that phone would need.
Have any of you been able to like look at the differences of the specs to see like where like what is missing from the Pixel 3 from the Pixel 3a?
We can't actually, yeah, sorry. So we can't actually see the specs, but we've seen it performs. So I'm guessing they're going to be releasing that in the next few days.
Yeah, there's a few early reviews out there. I think The Verge had one, and the processor is slower, and a few other features are definitely missing. But the big point they were making was the camera seems to be just as good as the Pixel 3 and 3 XL. So that seems to be like the real drawing point for this is really the best camera that's ever been on a phone in that price range. So
For sure.
Yeah.
I noticed that they price pointed the 3A, but didn't price point the other phone. Did anybody get a price point on the other phone?
I think it was $499.
Yeah, it was $479, so $80 more for the XL version, which is really not that much.
It's still good prices for a mid-level phone. If it's got a strong camera and it's got a good set of the Android features, it seems like a compelling device.
Yeah, that was one of the big themes too, I think, of the day was they're making the point of trying to bring all of these really great technologies to everyone. And so like with the 3A phones, it's lowering the price point. Like Victoria mentioned, the Google Go phones, like having all of the ML and AI features available on those phones. And then all the other technologies they announced today, like live caption and live relay. They really kind of kept bringing home the point of bringing this stuff to the, as many people around the world as possible.
And they also brought in the new, I'm trying to remember the name of the device, the Max, which is I'm sorry?
The Nest Hub Max?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is similar to the old one, but now has the camera. Is it a slightly larger footprint as far as the screen real estate?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's like 10 inches over 7, which is the first one.
Okay. So the keynote itself is typically more for the public. It's not necessarily for the developer community, because this is showing their products on their platform and their innovations with it. Obviously, where a lot of people are going to Google I/O, they're developers and they want to know where this is going to fit into them. So the second session was the more technical keynote. Does anybody want to talk about what some of the highlights that they saw at that?
I could take a jab at this. So one of the things that I guess when they started talking about was related to what they are trying to do on Android, and also like the way that they did their developer keynote. They split it out into different sections, being the starting one being Android, where they were mentioning mostly about how they are improving the way that we have been approaching Android as developers. So like a very big pain point for Android developers has been the camera API, for which they are providing new support libraries. This one called Android, the Camera X. So it's one of the Jetpack libraries, and they are just basically simplifying the whole API from like working with Camera API 1 and version 2. And then the cool thing that they I think they started mentioning was the new Jetpack library, that is the Jetpack Compose, which is a very it's a different UI reactive framework that they're implementing. So it's so like 10 years back we had something that we would work with like XMLs and other kind of UI framework. And now finally Google and the Android framework team is deciding to move forwards and upgrade the process of how we build user interfaces. And then they were also mentioning a lot of things related to how they're changing the APIs for us on Android. On the actions on Google, they were mentioning how they are like looking forward to the privacy sections and making sure that people, when they are approaching these devices, the new devices that are sitting at our home, they are more approachable. And then mentioning how couple of things that people can start integrating. That's one of the reasons that now they are making sure that developers can access the complete screen space on the new Google Hub Max. I find name weird though. It's like just keeps on adding extra words to it. But yeah, they are doing that. And basically now as developers, we have access to the whole screen. We can start working with it. So a lot of things are happening for developers. And I guess if you go in depth, there's like a lot of things to talk about.
Joe, is there anything that really got your attention?
Another, to go along with what Nishant was talking about, another thing they mentioned was that for the past 6 months, the entire Android Studio team had stopped doing feature development and was only working on performance improvements and fixing bugs. And that got a big ovation from what I could hear online. Jen and Philippe, were you there for that? Did you hear that ovation? And that seemed to be really well accepted.
Yeah, I was. And it looks like they made a lot of Android runtime optimizations. So now only precompiled parts of the app specific to your device are included. So that optimizes the size and the speed of the app a lot.
Yeah, so I think that all the optimizations they've been doing, and especially the stability of Android Studio, is something they should even in the next 6 months, because adding too many features to the Android Studio just kind of made it a bit less stable and leak a lot of memory, which tends to lead to developer frustration and resetting your laptop because everything starts to work really slowly. So it's a good thing that they've really focused on that, and I'm just dying to see all this in action. So to see all the optimizations and how they improve our build times and build speeds. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and with that, I know they rewrote essentially what they were calling instant run that was somewhat unreliable, and now we're calling, I think, apply changes. So it'll be really, really cool to try that out and see how stable it is, because that can definitely increase productivity if you have that quicker apply changes instead of having to completely rebuild everything. So it'll be cool to see how that works.
Yeah, totally. I think most people turn off instant run as fast as they can. So hopefully this rewrite really takes care of it.
Was there anything you were hoping to hear in this session that you feel they glossed over or didn't touch on, that there was just something that was really, really something you were hoping that needed to be there today?
I mean, I think one thing that was kind of missing, overall, it seemed to be Google was asserting their dominance in ML and AI, but there weren't a lot of surprises really, because I think there's so many leaks ahead of time. You're always hoping for that moment where they announce Kotlin is the new language, or some kind of big new API or user feature. And today it was not a lot of surprises. I think was one thing that was missing for me.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of it was building on things that they already had, building on top of it.
Yeah, so I was waiting for another Kotlin moment as well, because that got a really big ovation in 2 years ago. But the biggest ovation was basically the work on stability of Android Studio. So something was kind of missing. One thing that I kind of hope to hear about, because they have different stands here. You can also check a few different Android Auto cars, but they didn't actually tell anything about that. So we're probably gonna hear something tomorrow.
So we started with the regular keynote, and one last thing I remember from the keynote that actually got my attention on the machine learning was trying to find some more visibility to the process occurring in the machine learning layers, so that you could actually find out where biases may be coming from and what the specific sections are on how it's making that selection. Getting into machine learning myself, we did a few shows on that last season, where we talked about the fact that it's very easy for artificial bias to sneak in, but because it's such a black box, that it makes it difficult to see what's going on. And I was rather pleased to see that they're trying to find a way to open that black box up so that you can analyze bias, analyze exactly how it's making the choices it's making. After the technical session, it broke into all the separate sections. Obviously, the one that's going to be interesting to us, Ray Wenderlich, is what's new in Android. And I know that the Q is now on its, is it third release? Everybody's nodding, so I'll take that as a yes.
That's correct.
Beta release, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to actually install it on my phone right now, but we'll see what happens during the.
See, so that's bleeding edge. It's one thing to say that I've got the beta software, and I'll talk about the beta software on another show. We've got Joe here who is trying to install the software as we speak. So hopefully that won't take down his system while he's doing that. These, of course, were separate sessions. Did anybody watch the What's New in Android session and want to touch that one? Phil, why don't you take a look? Phil, you got some comments on that?
Yeah, so I think that What's New in Android didn't really introduce anything new or spectacular. So we kind of knew about the privacy changes. We kind of knew about the storage changes as well, about the dark theme and whatnot. So there's a couple of new things before weren't really leaked, like the React-like UI framework for Android, which really shocked everyone, I think, because Android was known for its XML so far, and its XML was one of the top things about the UI on Android. So they're kind of shifting from that, or kind of trying to make something new, which completely works in a different way. We could possibly replace XML. So I think that's one of the key points about innovation. But all in all, it revolved around security, about privacy, and with earlier versions. So how to migrate to Android Q.
And hopefully we got most of that. Philip does break up a little just because he is broadcasting directly from the conference, but we're getting as much as we can there. Does anybody else have anything to add for the Android What's New?
I'm excited for the different tiers of notifications. Like now there's the gentle notification. So it's a simple thing, but I'm looking forward to that.
They talked briefly about how to prevent the problem of, well, if everything's a priority notification, then nothing's a priority notification. What impressions did you get on how they're separating the priority from the gentle notifications?
It looks like it's like partly that you can like request priority if you want it, but also that, which I think is really cool, is that it's also partly user determined. So if like something is requested as like priority, and like maybe it starts off that way, and then the user's like, no, I want this to be a gentle notification. Then next time it'll be booted farther down the list in priority. At least that's what it looked like to me.
Also, one of the things that I did notice was that with the notification itself, they are all still taking developer feedback, which is like they know that it's not the most perfect version that they have come up with. So, and this actually stood out to me also for one other thing that was mentioned in the What's New Android, and that was about the external storage. So if you look at the history between the beta 1 until the current beta 3, there's a lot of backlash going on in the community about the way that Google is now coming up with this sandbox version of external storage APIs. And that's basically restricting all the file manager applications. Those who have been developing these file manager applications, they cannot look at the whole files. Like your directory structure. So that basically renders all these apps useless. A full section of the Play Store just dies because of it. But they did take care of it, and that was they didn't mention a lot about it, but there was a slide for it where they mentioned that if you are one of those applications, you have a functionality now to enable that feature in your manifest file, and then you can work, which is like they took the feedback, they iterated, and they finally put it back. Even though they were very skeptical about it, they didn't want to do it at all. But now in the third beta, they came up with this functionality that, okay, we are allowing this, just go ahead and like if you have the right means of doing this, then do this. So that was cool. They're listening to the developer feedback.
They seemed rather adamant about the private APIs and getting people away and off of those as well.
Yeah, that's happening. And like I work for, like in the current company itself, we have a couple of private APIs that we have to use because Google has never fixed the platform APIs. But the way that they are actually projecting for the future, it's happening for the good, because what they're saying is that don't use this version of the private API, because either we are going to provide you a better version of it, or there's some other solution that's available and you use that. But if people didn't do that, like without them forcing this, people will keep on using the private APIs, and in future during any platform update, if they decide to change this, then the whole set of apps will start breaking. So they are doing it for the good, although it's like they obviously get this backlash because people are afraid of upgrading these things, and they have to make a lot of changes in their app to navigate away from the private APIs. So there's a lot of things going on, but I guess eventually Google is going to win, trying to push people to do the non-private APIs, like towards the finalization of Android Q.
Yeah, I'm really glad that like with that though, it sounds like they're going to try to like listen to people who's like, well, I'm using this because I don't have this functionality, and then hopefully like in that process they'll add a public API for that, or like fix whatever bug it wasn't workaround for before it's like before they're booted.
Is there any form of ETA at this point on the life cycle of Q at this point?
I mean, generally speaking, it probably will come out in the fall with whatever Pixel 4 phone comes out. That seems to be what they've been doing for the past few years, is releasing it with the new phones. So hopefully it'll be out around October.
Joe, do you have any other comments on the what's new in Android?
Yeah, another thing that was exciting to hear was that I think they said point blank that they're recommending people start using Kotlin for any new projects that they create. So that was really great to hear. In addition to things like all the new APIs have nullability annotations, and so they're really full on with Kotlin at this point, which was really great to hear.
Do you think this is going to spell a demise for Java in the long run?
No, unfortunately, no. I mean, on Android maybe, but they're still supporting Java and C++. But I think Kotlin and Java will have a long lifetime together, both on the server and Android and elsewhere. But definitely within Android, Kotlin is the place to be.
Yeah, I did notice them actually throwing the phrase Kotlin first around quite a lot throughout the presentation. One of the things that caught my eye, and again, I'm not as strongly Android aware, was the new sharing screen that they seem to be developing to be a little bit better than previous versions. What were people's impression of that?
Thankful.
Sorry?
I said thankful.
Uh-huh.
Like even like the small things like bringing the copy to the top, like that's helpful. Improving the way that you can like share directly to a person. I haven't completely explored all the options yet, but just like the little bit that we saw makes me excited, and I think addresses a lot of the pain points that people have with sharing.
Yeah, they're making nice tweaks to it. Things like copy to clipboard and things like that.
Yeah, they're bringing developer happiness as well as user happiness. So that's a good thing.
Yes.
Jen or Philip, do you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, sure. So overall, as everyone said, and as we could see from the entire keynote and the entire event, they're strongly focusing on people, um, not just developers who are building the apps, but also the user feedback they get from users. So a lot of users were stressed out about the share screen, so they rebuilt it. A lot of users were stressed out about notifications. They rebuilt it again, and it's constantly improving the platform with the community, which is also one of the things that when Jen and I were at the GDG or Google Developers Group Summit, they mentioned. So they mentioned how tech is awesome and it brings you amazing opportunities, but tech with people is the next level, is the way to go, which is something they're really trying to push through all the developers and all the users as well.
Do
Yeah. Whoops.
go ahead.
Okay, I really saw a push towards. They're doing a lot with accessibility, and a big push towards having it be more helpful. And I like how the whole platform seems to be coming together more seamlessly. So I really look forward to the enhancements, making it more usable when you're driving, and everything you try to do seems like it'll come together nicely and be more seamless in this upcoming version.
I do want to mention something before we forget, and Google did that. They slipped it through the slides. Is that now we have platform updates coming in through the Play Store. It's like normal app updates. So like before this, had to wait on OEMs like the Samsung or someone like Xiaomi to bring us the operating system updates. But now they are doing it through the Play Store, so it's available to, I guess, everyone. And that's a big step for the fragmentation that we have on the Android platform. And they just like slid it through like quickly, not mention it as if it's not a big thing, but it is a big thing for people all around the world. Like for people those who come from like countries that have lower end devices, and they will now be able to get security patches and some basic, at least, operating system updates.
So that was
Maybe
what they call Project Mainline. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Maybe they slid it through so the OEMs wouldn't notice that they're doing it.
Well, as a developer, they also did say something about the OEMs. They did mention about that they will provide some extensions, which basically is similar to like I think it was for the camera APIs, where they said it's similar to like saying, if Samsung, then do this kind of thing. If it is Xiaomi, then do this kind of thing. So the if else statements that we used to put on our own are now being part of an extension API. That was funny for me. Like they are now deciding that we know that Samsung is different. They're just going on their own for this.
Yeah, and what's even funnier is that at the very booth where they were showing the Camera X API, the only phones that had it hooked up were Samsung phones. So yeah, they're really targeting the pain points of development life, and they're really working with the ORMs and manufacturers to bring everything into a cohesive platform. So yeah.
If it works with Samsung, it works everywhere. That's the idea for Android.
All right. So we've. Does anybody have anything else they want to add on this session?
Just like kind of jumping off of that, like with the updates, kind of on a smaller scale. Again, it was something they mentioned briefly, but being able to having like the in-app updates where you like inside your app, your user might get a notification. It's like, hey, there's an update for this app, and whether that's like a stopping like dialogue or just like maybe a button to be like, hey, just so you know, there's another update. I thought that was like really cool and helpful, and I think it'll be helpful for getting updates out to people who might not have automatic updates turned on, and then you have that things sitting in your API because there's those few users who still haven't updated. So I found that kind of exciting.
And that goes along with app modules. Is that right, Victoria? That so you can if you have an app update, you can just download that one slice of the app. Is that?
I don't know if that's part of the same stuff, but that it sounds related. But yeah, I think like whether it's a separate module that needs to be updated, or I think just like if your app has a new version, you could now say like, hey, this app has a new version.
There are two parts to it. I think what you guys are talking about. There's one that's the dynamic features, the one that Joe was talking about, and the other one that I think Victoria is talking about is the platform APIs that would like seamlessly work with all apps, and it will provide a system UI for updating it. Although the ones that is with the dynamic features that allows users to update or provide at least their features without showing that system UI. That's the one that you don't need to tell people that, okay, we updated your app. It's just happening in the background. You download it, and the feature is available to them. So that's actually pretty cool. It became stable this time. The dynamic features is becoming stable. It was in beta last time, and this time is when it's becoming stable.
All right, so we covered the. Go ahead, please.
I noticed there was some enhancements to the power management that if the device gets too hot or is draining more battery, there's some enhancements there. And now nullability will get errors instead of warnings. And there's a nullability annotation. So I noticed that those two things in there.
So we've covered the initial keynote and the technical keynote. We also talked about what's new in Android. Did anybody? I know that there were a lot more sessions. Did anybody follow any of the other sessions throughout the day that they want to talk about? Victoria, did you catch any of the other sessions? Anything of note that got your interest?
Sure. Yeah, I went to a couple. One that I'm always super curious about is all the stuff that they're doing with machine learning. So I went to the What's New in Android with Machine Learning. And there was a couple things there. They showed some of the machine learning stuff that was already there, as well as some of their like newer ML Kit features. So ML Kit is kind of their like black box machine learning library that you can just like use models that they've already set up and just kind of use that pretty seamlessly. And they added some like improvements for the face detection. They also added language detection and smart reply, as well as object detection and tracking. Oh, and then I think on-device translation. So it was like really cool to see how those can be used in just like different applications, as well as like an improved way to create your own custom models that's like maybe more specific for your app. So I like saying that like the barrier to entry to putting machine learning in your app just keeps getting lower and lower and lower. Like you don't have to like have a machine learning degree to be able to include some of these things in your app. Like you just like learn the API for this library and you're set to go for a lot of different cases.
It looked like they've also added in a lot of new stuff with TensorFlow to try to make that easier to connect to. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. I'm less familiar with TensorFlow, but it did seem that way.
Nishant, do you have any of the other sessions that you watched over?
Yeah, so I was the one that was very interesting to me was the app modularization using app compat libraries, the Jetpack libraries. I still say them as app compat for some reason. They're Jetpack now. So yeah, I was watching that, and that was very, very interesting because now what they are promoting is like before like this Google I/O, they were promoting it like you go with different modules, and it's all that's how the way is that it's an app module and all the sub library modules. And now they are completely now focusing towards the dynamic features that we have been talking about. And these are also modules. It's just they are the ones that we can push updates like over the air, sort of like a seamless update. So the way that the whole architecture was explained was very nice, and like I totally grasped it. But I was thinking from the perspective of like new users or new Android developers who are actually trying to learn architecture. And for them, I think this is a very good session. Like they should go back and watch this because it's explaining to them the reasoning behind why a certain architecture would exist. And that was very interesting to me because usually like people build a library and they will talk about you do this because we are telling you. and you should be doing it. It's the best thing to do. But this time onwards, they were more focused on like, why is this being done this way, and what benefit it brings to you. So yeah, so in that sense, they were mostly now focusing on having less library modules, but more dynamic modules, and talking about this 80-20 rules, where 20% of your users are, the 80% of your app is not being used by 20% of your users. So you basically have to make sure that all of them converge to that one point, and you make sure only the sections that they are using is visible to them or available to them. You provide different more features as the app dynamic features are downloaded on demand. So that was very interesting, and I love the way that it was delivered to. And then there was, I think there was a follow-up session for that too, where they start talking about the, like, how would you manage the native code for your applications when you are creating the architecture. And that is interesting to me, because at my current job I deal with native code, and there's a certain functionality that they were mentioning how to handle that with the C++ code in the Android ecosystem. So that was also very cool. And yeah, it's very informative. I must say that people, those who are dealing with these in their daily day jobs or something, they should definitely go back and check it out.
Nishant, I really appreciate that. Joe, did you have any of the other sessions that you were following?
Yeah, I saw two more after the main events. I saw the one that Nishant was talking about, the modular app architecture, and it was like you described. It was really, really good. It's the kind of one, though, I have to go back and watch a few times to really digest everything they're talking about. It's something like app architecture. It takes a while to really, really sink in. And then the second one that I saw was understand Kotlin coroutines on Android. So that was really great to see that they're pulling coroutines into the APIs, and talking about why they're really useful, and showing you kind of best practices on how to use coroutines. That was really nice to see.
All right, and I think it's safe to go to Jen now to ask if she's got any other sessions. I can actually see the entire team that's talking while we're doing this live cast, and most of you couldn't see this, but Jen was buzzed by a couple of clowns a few moments ago, and I think they wanted to be on camera with her, but they seem to have vanished now. Jen, did you have any other of the sessions that you attended?
Yes, I attended the one for Firebase, and it was a beginning session that just walked us through a simple Firebase app where you could keep track of receipts, like travel receipts. But what was neat about that session is they did it as a live coding demo, and they had someone coding in Swift, someone coding web, and someone coding in Android, and then like the Firebase console, all on one screen. So that was fun to watch and see how they were working together and interacting, and seeing the three different code perspectives with JavaScript and Swift and Kotlin. So that was fun to watch.
I'm glad to hear the coding worked well, because I know that over in the What's New in Android, the coding example they gave didn't exactly fly very well, but the demo gods will be the demo gods. Philip, did you have a session that you attended other than the ones, or anything you want to add to the ones that we've heard about?
Yeah, so one of the main sessions, I guess, that I went to was the Kotlin coroutines on Android session that Joe mentioned. And obviously I'm biased because, Nishant and I co-authored a book on Kotlin coroutines, but what I really liked was that a lot of the problems that people had, and a lot of the problems that people would usually have or would ask about, so how do you solve this, they've covered. So the entirety of the problems, like installation, handling exceptions, has been covered in the session. But then again, even though it was a really good session, I'm not sure how I feel about them forcing coroutines on Android like the main solution for everything. Forcing it to be within the architecture components library, like the view model. So I'm not sure about how I feel about that. So in one case, it's awesome because I love coroutines and I think it's the way to go. But then again, I think that if they do it in a bad way, it might just bring more overhead to the Android platform, to the Android libraries. So hopefully they'll do it really optimized, and they won't really bring any overhead to the existing applications, and they'll do the API itself really stable, so people can't really mess up their applications by just trying coroutines.
Philip, while I have you there, let me ask you, now that we've got the first day out of the way, what kind of things are you looking forward to? Are there any sessions that you really are chomping at the bit to see, or are there any things that coming up that you're really interested in?
So in general, I think I'd love to see anything about optimizing the platform and anything about UI. So anything that's related to UI, maybe even Flutter, to see how they're developing Flutter and how they're going to go with that on Android and iOS. So more or less anything that's related to the UI, to optimizations in the view lifecycle, and view APIs, how we build the UI on Android, as well as the compatibility with Android Q. So those are the things that I'm looking for in the next few days.
Jen, how about you? What are you looking forward to over the rest of the week?
I'm really looking forward to Android Studio tips and tricks, and then there's a lot about the assistant that I want to attend. In particular, I'm really excited to integrate the assistant into my own Android apps. So I'm really hoping that something gets released there so I can play with that, because I want to do that.
Okay, I'm going to skip over Joe for a moment because I've got a special question to him when I come back, but I'm going to go on to Nishant here. What sessions have you seen that are coming up that are really interesting to you?
Well, I'm again biased towards the native APIs and the TensorFlow ones, the ones on device ones. So because I was actually trying to work with the TensorFlow Lite, I guess like a month back, and I was having weird problems, and I want to see like what they have improved over time, and that's like on my list. Like I definitely want to watch those sessions. And then about the native APIs is something that I work constantly. So I want to see like what are they making the changes and how are they making a life of the developers much easier than what it has been. But because it's a very different ecosystem on the native side. It's not Kotlin. It's not as pretty concise as people see it on the Android side, like the general way of writing apps. But the native is the nitty gritty. Is the dirty version that you will see C++ APIs, and that has always been like a bit, I would say, difficult to grasp, and they have been improving a lot of things on that part. It's not like improvements have not come through during Google I/Os. It's just it's not improved enough for people to start getting onto it in a much easier manner. Like the barrier to entry is still very high. So I want to see what they're coming up in their sessions, and also like talk about how they approach problems. So those are the interesting parts.
Thank you so much. Victoria, what do you have coming up in your schedule that you're really interested in seeing?
I'm always excited to learn more details about what they're including in Android Jetpack, with like architecture components and everything else there. Just because I've been thinking about testing a lot recently, I'm looking forward to seeing what they're doing with the testing libraries with that. And then additionally, I'm really curious. I know they announced that Flutter will also be for web. And I don't know too much about Flutter yet. It's on my list of things to learn, and I'm really excited about. But I'm curious about how it's going to translate to that platform. So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Which, of course, turns us over to you, Joe. Joe, what do you see coming up? And I know that you've got also, if I'm right, an interest in Flutter as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, just like Victoria and Philippe, I'm definitely super psyched about the Flutter sessions. And yeah, they announced the web and also desktop, Mac OS and Windows and Linux. That's really exciting. So I'm looking forward to those. Also, there's a Swift for TensorFlow session tomorrow. So I think it was last year that they announced Swift with TensorFlow, and so Chris Latner is at Google now. So I don't know if he's going to be presenting that or what, but really excited to see that session. see how Swift is working out within the TensorFlow framework.
We'll definitely track him down. We want him on the show.
Totally.
So, Joe, I wanted to come to you last because as pillar lead, is there anything you can tease for us what may come out of this in the way of things that we'll see on Ray Wenderlich? Anything that you can tease?
Well, we'll definitely focus on some of the new features that were announced today. Things like how to do dark theme, how to deal with the new gesture navigations. We definitely have a lot of plans in store for Flutter. So that's another reason why I'll be really paying close attention to what they're doing with Flutter and anything we can tweak out from there for the near future. And so we'll do some really high priority content in the next few weeks, and then get ready for the release of Android Q in the fall and start updating some of our existing content.
I'm really looking forward to that. Does anybody have any other things they want to add in for this? This has been a lot of really amazing information. I mean, there was a lot to consume today. I hate to use the term, there was a lot to unpack. Really hate that term, but I'm going to use it anyway. Any last comments? Let me just go down the list, and if anybody has anything they want to say, you can just say yes, no, comment, whatever. Victoria, we'll start with you.
Let's see. I don't know. It's been really exciting day, and there's like so many different announcements and so many different little things that I think like at first it's just going to be processing all of it and imagining all of the different things that we can do with it and the possibilities for the future. So I feel like a lot of that will be happening in the next couple days.
I'm looking forward to it. Nishant, any last comments?
Yeah, for me the same, but like I think for me Google I was like it's just starting. Like the keynote section is done. The first day is when things are like they're not technical, but they are just releasing these announcements, are putting them out. But the next 2 days are the ones that are the hectic ones, because now I'm keeping track of all these sessions that are coming up, and I'm like, I want to see this one. And while I'm at work, I'm thinking about it. This session is happening. Like, how do I try and watch this up like as soon as I can? So yeah, I'm very much excited to be following up with the other 2 days and all the sessions that are coming up. Yeah, I'm looking forward to all of those.
And from what I saw in the What's New in Android, they're all at 9:30 on Thursday.
Yes.
Jen, any last comments from you?
One thing that hasn't come up because it's not technical in nature, they've been doing all these inspirational sessions, and the lead singer of the Flaming Lips is going to lead one. And a lot of those, also the winner of the Turing Award. And so I'm not going to any of those, but I hope they stream some of those because that could be interesting.
Wonderful. I really love inspirational sessions. The last con I spoke at, I did one of the inspirational sessions, and it's interesting because you're talking to tech, but you're talking to tech from the heart, and it can be very, very daunting. Philip, any last comments?
Yeah, just to add to you and Jen and Nishan. So the inspirational talks are really awesome, and I really hope to see them streamed and put up on YouTube so I can listen to them later on if I don't get to see them all. I think it's one of the core parts of every conference that should be expanded much more and should be put up on a bigger display, because we're all in tech, we all do technology, different kinds of technologies, but the essential part of it, us being human and us trying to help everyone else, is what's supposed to be the most important thing. And as Nishan said, Google I/O is just starting. That's true, but to me, like this day, to me it feels that it lasted 2 or 3 days. So there's so many things, so much content to see and to listen to. So it's really been a bit of a heartache, to be honest, because it lasts so long and there's so much to see, and it's just getting started, I should say. So
Philip, is this your first Google I/O?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. You have that look in your eyes of wow, just so much. Mr. Howard, any last comments from you? Oops, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Philip. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, yeah, I'm overwhelmed by all the information, so it's been
These cons are so much fun. Mr. Howard, any last comments from you?
Yeah, I just echo that. I'm like Nishant said earlier. I'm really looking forward to digging into the details of the sessions, and I've got all my favorites tagged in this schedule on the website, and it's it's just a subset of the things I'd want to watch. But the good news is they put them all online eventually, so and not too long. Probably by the end of the week they'll all be available. And I want to put a plug in for one of the inspiration sessions that Jen mentioned. There's one from Michio Kaku, who's a physicist, who will be talking about quantum computing and AI, and that should be really fun. I think that's on Thursday afternoon.
I love hearing him speak.
Yeah, I'll definitely be watching that one. So, yeah, just looking forward to digging into some of the details of the new APIs.
It's very hard to do one of these things because when we do cover things on the first day, we are covering just the high level because at Google I/O and other conferences like it, as everyone said, the real pudding comes later in the week, and that's when you get into every little speciality, all the new APIs, all the new toys to play with. And I know that everybody's looking forward to that on the Android platform. I really want to take time to thank everybody who made time today, especially Nishant, who's I think it's now coming up on about 6 a.m. there in Berlin. Joe Howard, Jen Bailey, Victoria Gonda, and Philip Babbitt. I really want to thank all of you. I also want to remind everybody the next episode of the Ray Wenderlich podcast will be out on May 15th. We have Peter Steinberger, who makes iOS apps that are lickable, and also the founder of the PSPDF kit. Also coming in June, during the first week, we'll be doing this whole thing again for iOS. Note, this is, I believe, the only time that iOS is or will be mentioned during this entire hour show because there's no point to it. But we will be doing that show in about a month for those who are on the other platform. In the meantime, we want to thank TripleByte again for sponsoring this episode. TripleByte again, if you go to triplebyte.com/Ray and you get a job through TripleByte, you will get $1,000 signing bonus. I want to thank everybody, and I want to thank the team out at raywenderlich.com for doing this. And until next Google I/O, we will see you at the next show. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.